He wrapped her in his arms, pulling her close, kissing her fiercely, like a man parched in the desert. They kissed, long and deep, as if they'd done so in their minds 100 times. His hands slid down her back, gripping softly, their lips still locked. He lifted her gently, as if she were fragile crystal. He carried her to the room, an old but warm space, the door closing silently, the night unable to hold back two bodies that had waited too long. Her nightdress slipped off, falling like a leaf. He gazed at her, dreamlike. They merged, two searing currents, breaths, soft sounds, the creak of old wood witnessing their desperate souls. He wasn't gentle like an older man. He was fierce, at times crushing her until she couldn't breathe, then easing, as if making up for a lifetime of want. Hello, dear audience. Today, we are thrilled to present to you a deeply emotional story, filled with feelings that anyone can relate to. This is not just a tale of events, but one full of emotions, secrets, and fateful decisions that change the lives of each character. Let us embark on this journey together and experience the ups and downs through every chapter, where anything can happen. Let's begin now. Emma stepped softly into the old wooden house, her heart heavy with emotions she couldn't quite name. That day, she had officially become Michael's wife, starting a new chapter in her life. The house sat quietly on Elm Street, Salem, Oregon, surrounded by towering oak trees, their leaves rustling in the breeze, mingling with the chirping of birds. The scent of aged wood from the house's beams blended with the faint glow of lavender candles, creating a feeling that was both familiar and strange, as if the place held secrets from years gone by. Emma, a young woman in her prime, carried a captivating beauty with deep, soulful eyes, sleek black hair, and smooth, fair skin. Her every step was graceful, fluid, exuding a natural allure, but beneath her striking exterior lay a lonely soul, grappling with a marriage that lacked the connection she craved from Michael, her husband, who was always preoccupied within the walls of their home. Only James, Michael's father, remained a constant presence, a rugged middle-aged man with a quiet demeanor. His eyes held untold stories. In the early days of living with her new family, Emma thought the flutter in her chest when their eyes met was just the nervousness of adjusting to her role as a daughter-in-law. But as time passed, fleeting moments with James sparked a small, smoldering flame within her, quiet yet dangerously tempting. Michael left the house at dawn, before the first rays of sunlight could fully warm the small backyard garden. He returned late, often after darkness had enveloped the old wooden house. Some nights, he'd give Emma a perfunctory hug, devoid of warmth or feeling, before collapsing into sleep, leaving her with a cold, empty space beside her. The tender moments, the loving glances that once made Emma's heart race when they were dating, had vanished, as if they were distant memories. At night, she lay awake in the silent bedroom, listening to Michael's steady breathing, her heart aching. The absence wasn't just physical, it was the longing to be seen, to be cherished as a woman, not just a shadow in her husband's life. She yearned for a gentle hand to hold hers, a whispered word of affection, or simply the sense that someone truly desired her. But the long nights left her alone with her solitude, wrestling with questions about her worth in this house. Emma began to feel like a decorative piece in the home, beautiful, but untouched. Each day repeated in an endless cycle, cooking, cleaning, tending to every corner of the house, waiting for a husband who never truly came back to her, and wondering if anyone in the world truly saw her, truly valued her. That emptiness didn't just wear on her body, it cracked her heart, like parched earth desperate for rain. But James was different. He watched her quietly, without fanfare, but with a presence that Emma could feel. He helped with small tasks, picking up fallen apples in the yard, fixing the flickering kitchen light, or carrying heavy boxes she couldn't manage alone. Those simple acts were like drops of water on her drought-stricken soul. Sometimes, his gaze lingered on her a second longer than necessary, just enough to make her heart skip. It wasn't a shallow admiration, but a deep, meaningful look, as if he saw the hidden parts of her she kept locked away. At first, Emma blushed, flustered by these moments, quickly turning away to hide her feelings. But gradually, she stopped shying away. Instead, a quiet anticipation began to grow within her, unspoken, indescribable, but as real as a current beneath the surface. making her pulse quicken each time their eyes met. One rainy afternoon, Emma dashed inside from the yard, her clothes soaked through, clinging to her curves. James had just come in from the garden, and his eyes briefly met her form before he looked away. But Emma knew she'd ignited a spark in the quiet fire that was already burning. That night, Michael came home late again. Emma wrapped her arms around him, seeking warmth, but he brushed her off, mumbling, "I'm tired. Let's sleep." She lay still in the dark, eyes open, her mind not on the husband turning away from her, but on James's deep, steady gaze, the only man in the house who truly saw her as a woman. The next morning, Emma stepped onto the porch early, wearing a thin nightgown, the cool breeze raising goosebumps on her skin. James was already there, holding a mug of coffee, staring out at the mist-covered oaks. When she approached, he turned, his eyes catching on the neckline of her gown before quietly shifting away. "Up early," he said, his voice calm but rough. Emma sat beside him, not too close, not too far, just near enough to hear each other's breathing. In the days that followed, Emma paid more attention to her appearance, her hair loosely tied, a touch of lipstick, dresses that were modest but hugged her figure. Every gesture, every step was deliberate, not overt, just enough to hold James's gaze a moment longer. She'd drop a scarf and bend to pick it up, or pass by him with a faint trace of perfume on her shoulders. He stopped pretending not to notice. His looks grew longer, heavier, carrying the spark of desire she'd known in her youth. One sweltering afternoon, the power went out. Emma shed her cardigan, left in a thin tank top and shorts. As James came downstairs, their eyes locked. He turned away, but his grip on the towel in his hand betrayed him. She didn't cover up or step back, letting the moment unfold naturally. That night, Michael didn't come home, sending only a curt text. Emma sat in the dark bedroom, hearing James's footsteps in the hallway. Moonlight caught his silhouette as he leaned against the window, looking out at the yard. She cracked the door open to watch. In that moment, he wasn't her father-in-law, not a man a generation older, but a man with loneliness, strength, and eyes that saw her as a woman. The next morning, while hanging laundry, Emma slipped on a sheer white nightdress. James passed by, paused, and nodded slightly. "You look like her, you know. Beautiful," he said softly, his words clear. She turned, meeting his gaze, no longer hiding, no longer pretending. Her small smile, light as a breeze, was her clearest answer. The air in the house shifted. They didn't speak of it, but every glance, every movement hesitated, as if they'd crossed a fragile line. Emma felt his subtle looks, the pause of his hand when passing a glass, the times he stood just behind her as she cooked, inches away. She could hear his breath, warm and close, against her back. She began testing boundaries, hanging laundry in a thin sundress, crossing the living room as he watched TV, bending slightly to reveal her waist. It was subtle enough that anyone else would think it accidental, but she and James knew there was no innocence left. One humid evening, the power still out, James sat on the porch, shirtless, his weathered chest strong from years of labor. Emma joined him, holding a glass of lemonade, her fingers brushing his as she handed it over. The brief touch sent a shiver through her. He looked at her longer than usual, far longer. "Does Michael take care of you?" he asked suddenly. Emma gave a soft, bittersweet smile. "Not really. He's always busy." James nodded, but his eyes no longer wandered to the distance. They locked on to the loneliness in hers. Emma felt herself drifting in a nameless emotion. She knew it was wrong, but for the first time in years, she felt seen, desired, alive as a woman with a body, a heartbeat, a yearning. That night, in the bathroom, her nightdress slipped to the floor as she changed. The door creaked open. James passed by and caught a glimpse. His eyes lingered. His hand froze on the knob. Then he quickly retreated. No words. But Emma stood still, a burning sensation running down her spine, not from being seen, but from knowing she'd let him see. At breakfast the next day, they were quieter, the air thick, as if everything happening was swelling beneath a calm surface. Michael ate quickly, muttered about work, and left in a rush. Emma washed dishes while James sat at the table, smoking, one cigarette after another. As she passed, he asked, "Are you lonely here?" She paused, not turning, and whispered, "Yes." She stepped onto the porch, leaning against a post, staring at the sky. James followed. They stood side by side in the dark, moonlight on their skin. She wore no bra, her thin tee shifting in the breeze. He stepped closer, not too close, but not far either. "You're a beautiful woman, truly," he said softly. It wasn't just a compliment, it was a seal on all the silent glances they'd shared. Emma didn't reply. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear it. She knew one word now could shatter everything, cross every line, but she didn't move, didn't retreat, just stood there, letting him see, letting him know, waiting for his choice. The next morning, while he was out, Emma entered his room, telling herself it was to tidy up. The space was neat, smelling of coffee and tobacco. A half-read book, glasses, and an old wedding photo sat on the desk. She looked at the woman in the picture, her mother-in-law, kind but sad. Emma touched the frame, then pulled back, guilt tightening her chest. She left, but her heart was restless. Their silence now carried a hum, not the quiet of a bored family, but the hush before a storm. Emma was no longer the shy newlywed. She was a woman awakening to her own desires, dangerous and alive. James was no longer just the reserved father-in-law. His eyes spoke what shouldn't be said. In that house, they balanced on a thin wire. One wrong breath, and it would all collapse. After those nights standing close in silence, a faint electric charge seemed to linger between them, hovering in the air. One longer look, one step closer, and it would ignite. Michael remained consumed by work, growing more distant, not noticing Emma's new hairstyle or the perfume she wore. She didn't complain, just cooked, lived, and quietly felt James's eyes on her as she bent to pick up a fallen spoon or walked across the creaky porch. Once, while preparing dinner, James passed behind her in the cramped kitchen. Their hands brushed as he reached for a mug, a fleeting touch that froze them both. Emma pulled back quickly, but her flustered glance gave her away. James said nothing, just looked at her briefly and walked off. But she knew his calm was a facade. One rainy afternoon, the sky heavy, Emma folded clothes in the living room. James entered, holding a rag. He picked up a white blouse she'd folded, studied it, and asked, "Yours?" "Yeah, just for lounging," she said. He smiled faintly, his eyes tracing the fabric as if seeing her in it. Her pulse raced. She acted unaware, bending to fold a pair of jeans, her back slightly arched, the thin nightdress shifting, and his gaze no longer hid. One day, she slipped in the bathroom, her knee hitting the tile. She yelped, and James, hearing, rushed in without knocking. She was bare, the towel fallen to one side, her shoulders exposed, trembling from the shock. He froze, his eyes on her skin, then turned away fast, his hand shaking as he handed her a towel. Emma wrapped herself, but her body betrayed her. It was waking, calling, craving a real man's touch, not the cold, rushed brushes she got. The next morning, James was up early, and so was Emma. They met in the backyard where Ivy climbed the fence. He was watering plants. She approached with a basket, planning to pick some tomatoes. He steadied her as they reached for the same vine, his hand grazing her waist, not hard, not deliberate, but lingering. He didn't pull away immediately, testing her reaction. She stood still, took a deep breath, and turned with a light smile, soft as a breeze. From then on, small touches happened more often, neither initiated nor avoided. Handing over a towel, fingers brushed, reaching for a plate. His breath warmed her cheek. Picking up a dropped fork under the table, their eyes met too close, too fast, but neither looked away. Another night. The power out again. Emma's shower cut off. She wrapped a towel, forgetting to lock the door. James knocked, then opened it, thinking something was wrong. He froze, seeing her turn, the towel slipping to her hips, her pale skin glowing in the dim light. They stood. Time halted. Then he backed out, shutting the door, silent. But Emma knew the line had been touched, not broken, but cracked. That night, James didn't sit on the porch as usual. He stayed in his room, lights off. Emma lay awake, replaying the moment the towel fell, his eyes on her, not a father-in-law's, but a man's, seeing a woman who ached to be wanted. From that day, Emma stopped fearing his gaze. Sometimes, she craved it, that look making her feel valued, desirable, real, not a ghost trailing a husband buried in deadlines. James stopped avoiding her too. He didn't seek solitude, didn't step back when she was near. He spoke more, asking small things, what spices she used, where she bought her dress. Each question quickened her pulse. Once, he asked her to his room to find papers in an old desk. The room smelled of wood, coffee, tobacco. He rifled through a drawer. She knelt beside him, reaching for a file. Her shoulder brushed his. The space between them was air, her scent, their breath. He didn't pull away this time, letting her touch linger, her fragrance fill his space. She stayed longer than needed, their hands meeting on a sheet of paper. His paused, then slowly withdrew, wordless. That night, a thunderstorm roared. Emma, scared of thunder since childhood, sat curled in the living room, a dim lamp flickering, her hair loose, nightdress clinging. Michael was at a job site. James passed by, saw her, and asked, "Can't sleep?" She nodded, lips sealed. He handed her a mug of tea and sat, not across, but beside her. His hand rested on the chair's arm, near her shoulder, protective. She didn't shy away, leaning her head lightly against him, almost unconsciously. He didn't move, didn't turn away. They sat through the rain, candlelight dancing, in a heavy silence. A lightning flash startled her, and she pressed into him, her head on his chest, hand on his arm, instinctive. He wasn't stone anymore. His hand touched her shoulder, light, cautious, as if the air might break. The touch sent a shiver through her. She looked up, eyes wet, lips parted. He gazed at her, not as family. They didn't kiss, didn't embrace, but that moment tore every boundary apart. The next morning, James stayed in his room late. Emma stood before her mirror, studying her body, her eyes, wondering how far she'd gone. After that, she didn't avoid touches. She'd step back when he was near, her back brushing his chest. She'd stumble on the wet porch steps, letting him catch her waist, his rough, warm hands steadying her. One afternoon, she wore a sleeveless silk dress, so sheer the light revealed her lingerie's outline. She brought lemonade to him, lounging on the living room sofa. His eyes were closed, shirt unbuttoned, veins visible, chest rising with each breath. She set the glass down, leaning low, her chest near his face. He opened his eyes, paused on her, then met her gaze, unflinching. Their stare held, the longest yet. James quit his job, staying home more, claiming age slowed him down. Emma knew better. He wanted to be near her. She shed her timid role, passing him with slow steps, fingers grazing the table as he read, standing close as she stirred soup, knowing he was behind her. He stopped hiding, watching her like a man watches a woman, tracking every move, every breath, every faint smile. They hadn't crossed the final line, but their actions spoke louder than touch. They connected through glances, breaths, the thick silence of their encounters. Emma dreamed of him, blurry, intense dreams of a man's scent, his breath, arms pulling her close, hands exploring beyond her shoulders or waist. She woke with a racing heart, clothes damp, body aching with want, then faced him at breakfast, pretending nothing had happened. She saw his struggle too, his eyes straying, his grip tightening on his mug, his breath uneven. Each day, the unspoken truth grew. Emma knew one moment, one reckless spark, would unleash everything. Their small touches, lingering looks, became a silent game. Neither spoke it, but both waited. Each day stretched the fragile thread between them. Emma grew bolder, passing James in a sheer nightgown, not lowering her eyes when his settled on her lips. She stood tall, moved slowly, smiled, a wordless challenge. He couldn't turn away anymore, following her like a starving man eyeing a feast. One morning, after his workout, sweat on his neck and chest, Emma brought him orange juice, saying it was for him. He took it, eyes on her pale wrist. She knelt to tie his loose shoelace, her face close to his. He held his breath, gripping the glass. She finished, looking up, inches away. He exhaled softly, like surviving a seizure, a beast resisting prey. That night, braless. She cleared the table after dinner. Her dark gray tee clung with every move, revealing soft curves. James tried not to look, but his trembling hand on a plate betrayed him. She saw it all. His veins pulsing when she leaned near, his abrupt retreat to his room, knowing he'd break if he stayed. Then it came, a stormy night, rain pounding the old shingles, drowning out the world. The power cut again, leaving only faint lightning through the windows. Emma was showering when the water stopped. Sighing, she dried her wet hair and slipped on a thin white nightdress, damp and clinging from the steam, outlining her every curve. She stepped out, meaning to ask James about the pump, but as the bathroom door opened, she faced him. Fresh from his shower, he wore only a white towel around his waist. His toned body glistened with water droplets, catching the lightning's glow. His wet hair mussed across his forehead, accentuating his sharp features and deep eyes, now burning with a desire he couldn't hide. They stood frozen. Time stilled. The space closed in, filled with rain and their hurried breaths. Emma didn't cover herself, didn't turn, didn't retreat. Her dress, nearly transparent, bared her pale skin and graceful lines in the flickering light. Her wet hair fell over her shoulders, water trailing down her neck to her collarbone, making her mesmerizing. Her lips trembled, her eyes on James, not timid, but a silent, fierce invitation, vibrating the air between them. This time, James didn't look away. His gaze locked on her, deep and hungry, yet tempered by a seasoned man's restraint. He stepped forward, slow, testing his own limits. Emma didn't move, didn't speak, didn't flinch. She stood, trembling from the rain's chill and the heat rising within. They were a breath apart, close enough for her to feel his warm exhale, mixed with the clean scent of soap lingering on him. In one beat, he raised his hand, rough fingers hovering near her shoulder, inches from her skin, as if asking permission, waiting for a sign. Time stopped. Emma closed her eyes, lashes quivering, her body leaning toward him, into the hand awaiting her. It was the wordless answer he needed. His fingers touched her shoulder, gentle but electric, as if grazing something sacred and forbidden. Their breaths grew heavy, hearts racing loud enough to echo in the quiet. Their bodies burned, a stark contrast to the storm's cold. Then, as if every barrier shattered, James leaned down, his lips meeting Emma's in a kiss. They melted into a fevered embrace, lost to the world, heedless of boundaries or duty. Outside, the rain poured, but in that wooden house, there was only them. A blaze consuming two souls who found each other in an unstoppable moment. After that, the distance between them vanished. James stood closer, talked longer, his eyes unguarded. Emma kept the fire alive, thinner dresses, shorter hymns, lingering glances that beckoned. One afternoon, he dozed on the sofa. She approached quietly, bent close, studying his face, then brushed his silver hair, damp with sweat. He woke, startled, their eyes meeting too near. She didn't pull back. He didn't turn away. They stared, long and deep. She stood, walked off, leaving him with the warmth of her touch. Sleep eluded them both. They waited for an excuse, a slip, a moment to abandon restraint. It came sooner than expected. Michael announced a 3-day business trip. Emma didn't ask where. James just nodded as Michael grabbed his suitcase and left. Emma watched the car disappear, then turned back. Her eyes were colder as she passed the living room. James sat with a newspaper, lamplight on his shoulders. She stopped, stood before him, silent, staring. He lowered the paper. They faced each other, the ticking of a long-set bomb. She stepped closer, sat beside him, inches away. He looked at her, still, barely breathing. She placed her hand on his knee, small, soft, warm. He didn't push it away. They sat endless moments. He covered her hand with his, squeezing lightly, and the house held its breath. After that night, the house changed. The tension wasn't a taut string but a smoldering haze. Emma stopped teasing. She acted, sitting closer, standing nearer, looking at James as a woman in love, open, unashamed, simply wanting. He couldn't resist, his gaze no longer dodging, sometimes tender, sometimes ravenous, never cold. That night, rain fell steadily. Emma wore a black silk nightdress, slid at the thigh, hair loose, and walked to the living room where James read an old book under a golden lamp. His eyes darkened as she neared, pausing as she stood, braless, unzipped, silent, then sat beside him. No one spoke. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move, his breathing heavy. Her hand rested on his chest through his thin shirt, feeling his racing heart. She said nothing, her fingers sliding to his waist. He stayed still, balanced on a razor's edge between abyss and inferno. He grabbed her hand, held tight, and turned. Their eyes met. No hesitation, no pretense. She leaned up slowly. His scent, man, smoke, coffee dizzying her. He didn't push or pull, but as her lips neared, he whispered, "Emma." She paused, his voice weak, a final moral reflex fading. "I can't stop," she murmured, eyes on him. He let go, and her lips touched his, light as a night breeze on water. That was it. Everything exploded. He wrapped her in his arms, pulling her close, his kiss fierce, desperate, like a parched man drinking at last. They kissed, long, deep, as if they'd done it in their minds 100 times. His hand slid down her back, gripping softly, their lips locked. He lifted her, gentle, as if she were fragile crystal. He carried her to his room, the old space warm, the door closing soundlessly, the night unable to hold back two bodies that had waited too long. Her nightdress slipped off, falling like a leaf. He looked at her, dreamlike. They merged. Two searing currents, breaths, soft sounds, the creak of old wood witnessing their desperate souls. He wasn't gentle like an older man. He was fierce, alive, sometimes crushing her, then easing, as if making up for a lifetime of want. Morning came. Emma in his arms, sunlight through the blinds painting her skin like a masterpiece. He stroked her hair, silent. She gazed at him, eyes warm with love. She'd crossed a threshold with no return, yet felt no fear, only life, her true self. James, widowed nearly 20 years, who thought he'd live out his days with books and garden, now held a young, vibrant woman, bold and craving. He knew he was lost, risking everything, but never had he felt so real. From then, their bond was no longer stolen glances or chance touches but something undeniable, fierce. No hiding, no feigning ignorance, yet no words confessed it, just knowing gestures, longer looks, touches whose echoes lasted into night. Mornings meeting in the kitchen, familiar yet strange. By day, Emma played the dutiful wife, cooking, cleaning, greeting James politely. But at night, with Michael gone, she transformed. Deeper eyes, slower voice, sheerer dresses, shorter, her steps soft, deliberate, summoning him from the shadows. James sank deeper into the inescapable spiral. He woke earlier to see her in a thin top in the garden, lingered in the living room for her descent down the stairs. His door stayed unlocked at night, a crack open, a silent invitation. They didn't share every night, but each time was a release of pent-up years. He paused if she hesitated, but she never backed away, growing hungrier, as if she'd never truly lived before. One late afternoon, golden light filtering through the oaks. Michael returned early. Inside, Emma was in James's room, the old door just shut, creaking faintly, guarding their secret. They were lost in whispers, eyes full of meaning, the small room shrinking to their soft breaths and the heat of nearness. But the sound of the car in the driveway cut through like a blade. Emma flinched, her heart pounding as if it would burst. She hurriedly adjusted her rumpled dress, fingers trembling as she smoothed her hair, eyes darting for an invisible escape. James, calm as ever, bore the lines of a man used to sudden storms. He stood, fixed his shirt, and opened the door with a steady air, as if they'd only been chatting about the weather or the garden. "Michael's back," he said, voice even. No ripple, but beneath, his heart raced like a drum. He glanced at Emma, a quick look to steady her, signaling control. Emma lingered behind the door, fighting to slow her breath. Sweat beaded on her neck, though the room wasn't warm. Michael's footsteps grew louder, his familiar voice calling, "Emma, where are you?" Each sound hammered her mind, urging her to stay calm, act natural. She took a deep breath, stepped out with a forced smile, saying, "Here, you're back early." That evening, the three sat around a simple dinner, but the air was thick, strained. The afternoon's close call didn't scare them, it fueled them, drawing them deeper into their forbidden dance. In Emma's heart, guilt mixed with thrill, a fire both warming and consuming. James, seasoned, knew they treaded a dangerous path, but its peril made stopping impossible. Night fell, moonlight streaming through the windows, casting a ghostly glow over the house. Emma lay awake, replaying the afternoon, knowing today they'd escaped, but next time might not be so easy. That thought, rather than deterring her, made her heart race, eager for the next risk. They grew cunning, crafting excuses. Emma claimed headaches to rest. Michael was swamped with work. James pretended to read, but waited for her late-night visits. They met when the house slept. A held hand, a look enough. Then they fell into each other like lost pieces reunited. James's experienced touch, his kisses, his gazes set Emma ablaze. She'd never been led so surely, never felt so loved with such mature strength. He felt young again, each heartbeat, each beat of sweat, each embrace from behind proving he was a man in full. They loved like that. Night after night in darkened rooms, moonlight through curtains, their touches under the glow, breaths quickening at any sound from Michael's room. It was a bond both sinful and searing, terrifying yet inescapable. Once, as Emma mopped the floor, James passed, bending to help. His hand covered hers, and she looked up. In a flash, their lips met in the kitchen, where anyone could walk in. After the rushed kiss, she giggled, playful, dangerous. He looked at her, love and helplessness in his eyes. They knew they played with fire but couldn't quench it. They ignored neighbors' curious glances, Michael's cooler stares as Emma grew distant. No one dared ask. No one stirred the smoldering truth between the two under one roof. Leaving James's room at midnight, Emma would stand before her mirror, seeing his marks on her skin, her eyes alive, wondering how she sustained such a forbidden bond so vividly. She lived two lives, the perfect wife, and the woman craving a man she shouldn't. What shocked her wasn't guilt, but the passion that erased all else. When James looked at her, calm as a still lake, her reason dissolved. James felt the same. He knew their actions defied every moral code, but he couldn't stop, not just for desire, but because she made him live again after years alone. He never thought he'd be loved again, needed, called by his name in the dark, not as family, but as himself. One afternoon, Emma washed her hair in the backyard, water cutting off mid-rinse, foam in her locks. James, returning from the garden, fetched a bucket of rainwater. The setting sun lit the drops on her shoulders like crystals. He stood, ladle in hand, eyes on her hair, then poured water over her head, streams running down her neck, her back, making her shiver. She turned, their eyes wordless, and he poured, as if bathing in something holy he dared not touch. That night, she went to his room. No knock, no pretense. Wearing only an oversized white shirt. Nothing beneath. He looked up as she entered, needing no reason. Her eyes said it all. He opened his arms. She sank into his chest. They didn't rush, just held each other, as if it might be their last. The secrecy heightened their intensity. By day, no one knew how close they'd been at night, hearing each other's heartbeats. Every move at dinner, every past dish held layers only they understood. Michael stayed oblivious, not questioning, just noting Emma's silence, her eyes elsewhere. She began journaling her feelings in a small notebook, not lustful, but emotional, capturing how only those who've lived long know what it means to be touched by a heart, not just skin. At a family reunion upstate, Emma and James rode together in the back seat, alone. Michael took another car with co-workers. The 3-hour drive was mostly silent, but a slight lean, a feigned reach for her bag made the air electric. She closed her eyes, head on the window. He shifted closer, eyes on her cheek. He wanted to kiss her but didn't, only touched her hair, preserving something delicate. Their passion wasn't just physical, it was their presence. They listened, understood. James knew her favorite dishes. She knew his reading hours. Each day was a melody, replayed but never dull, only deeper. One night after a big rain, Emma lay on James's lap in his room, her hand on his stomach. They sat in silence. "I know this can't stay hidden forever," he said, voice low, eyes heavy. She said nothing, placed his hand on her cheek, and whispered, "I don't want to stop. I can't." He didn't reply, just held her tighter. A silent vow. Secrets kept too long aren't just secrets, they're balloons waiting for a pin. Emma and James thought they could control it, keep it quiet, but fire leaves smoke, and smoke finds the smallest cracks. One ordinary night, Michael came home late, weary, silent. Emma offered him juice, but he waved it off. His eyes studied her, the first time in weeks, probing, wordless. A chill in the air. She felt a fan cutting through the house's warmth. After she went to bed, Michael sat in James's room. James read under a lamp. "Notice anything off with Emma lately?" Michael asked after a pause. James looked up, shook his head. "Nothing. Same as always." Michael gave a joyless smile, nodded, and left, his shadow heavy. Days later, Michael watched closer. Their glances, steps, Emma's kitchen exits, James's long living room stays. He said nothing, just noted every detail. Emma sensed the shift. Stopped touching James's hand in passing, stopped nightly visits, but their eyes still clung. They hid a growing fear. Then, one day, Michael called her to the backyard near the apple tree and fruit. He handed her a phone, showing grainy footage of her leaving James's room at midnight. Hair mussed, dress in hand, unguarded. Emma froze, hands shaking. He just looked, eyes pained, angry, hopeless. Seeing strangers, she couldn't speak, her throat dry, body plummeting into a void. She stepped back, tears absent, only her heart's frantic beat. Michael's faint laugh cut her small. He turned, walked away, leaving no words. That night, James couldn't find Emma. He waited, searched. Her room was empty, a note on the table in her handwriting. "I'm sorry." He knew she was gone for good. The house reverted, but colder, emptier. Dinners were just father and son, talk cut by silence. James tended the garden, read, but his eyes were tired, having seen too much. Michael rarely came home, taking a job at another branch, barely calling. Emma left quietly, her whereabouts unknown. Sometimes James stood at the street, watching passing women, hoping for her silhouette. But no one turned back. Only wind and an old sky, keeping an expired secret. Their cost wasn't punishment from others, but loss, regret, a void never filled. Their love had been too real, too fierce, too alive, and it broke everything, leaving no room for explanations or forgiveness. Each carried a piece of the past, a scar unhealed. Only nights, only dreams dared revisit, like a cold gust through the old wooden door, reminding them of a fire that blazed and left ashes they'd never sweep away. Time passed. Things seemed normal, but warped. The house stood silent among the oaks. Birds sang each morning. Coffee's scent drifted from the kitchen, but its people were changed. Michael moved like a ghost, speaking little, eating less, his eyes never truly meeting anyone. James slowed, spoke less, his hair graying fast in months. Emma's old room stayed untouched, as if she'd left that morning, clothes in the closet, books on the desk, slippers by the bed. It made James pause, as if opening the door would bring her smile. "Morning, James." He told no one of the past. Didn't write it, didn't justify, didn't blame. He let it rest in his heart, a storm that swept through, leaving barren ground. Once, when Michael mentioned Emma at dinner, James set down his fork, looked outside, and said softly, "She was someone special." That year, he started a journal. Short entries nightly. Simple. The apple tree budded today. The wind turned cool. In a dream someone knocked but didn't enter. Each line held a nameless feeling. quiet and aching. One winter day, a neighbor said they'd seen Emma in the city, working alone, quiet, kind. James nodded, asked nothing, didn't seek her, didn't write. Some wounds don't need reopening, some loves are enough kept in memory. Emma lived on, worked, trimmed flowers each morning, arranging daisies, lilies, at night. In the quiet, she stared out windows into darkness, wind, and an image never leaving her, a silver-haired man, deep eyes, warm hands, a nameless love. Their story, though unknown, was real. Fire, water, fear, rapture, a chapter of their lives. They couldn't keep each other, didn't belong to each other, but each held a piece of that memory, an irreplaceable shard. Some things need no forgiveness, can't be forgotten, only carried silently forever, like ink spreading on paper. The more you erase, the deeper it sinks. One day, you learn to see it not as a stain, but as part of your life's tale. Goodbye, and thank you to all the audience for joining us throughout today's story. We hope that the emotions and lessons from the story have touched your hearts. Don't forget to follow us so you won't miss out on other exciting stories in the future. Wishing you a wonderful day and see you again soon.